It's finally time. COVID-19 vaccines are now available to everyone 16 and older. To find and schedule an appointment, go to vaccinelocator.doh.wa.gov. A message from the Washington State Department of Health. And here to talk about that and much more here on GameTime Sports Talk, joining us courtesy of the Vancouver-Washington branch of the NAACP and Wellness and Recovery on the Go is Miss Benita Presley joining us here again on GameTime Sports Talk. Benita, how does your afternoon find you?
I am doing well. I'm hanging in there, and I'm not going nowhere.
Amen. I know that's right. That's what I want to. That's what I want to hear. But there's a lot of things that I want to touch base on, and information that's come out since our last conversation a week ago. We find out that there has been approval for emergency use for a vaccination of 12 to 15-year-olds, the teens and tweens vaccine, as it's being called, and that opens up another segment of the population to get vaccinated, trying to reach herd immunity. We hear numbers going up in several, of course, populated counties, but still the number not nearly high. Before we get to the vaccine hesitancy, I want to talk about maybe some of those who are addressing the hesitancy of getting the vaccine for their teens and tweens, for the 12 to 15-year-old population. That's more or less so that you can open up schools safely and full go come the fall. Your thoughts and some of the things that maybe we should know about this newly open demographic to the vaccination process.
Okay, so with what you just said and adding to that, children are probably going to be the ones that are going to be one of the biggest carriers because they're going to start running around and playing with neighborhood kids and kids at school, touching on things and not remembering to wash their hands, taking their masks off and not staying safe in that manner. So they're going to be spreaders of it. And the way around that is, of course, they're going to be pushing for them to be vaccinated. So Pfizer was one of the vaccinations where they had pulled it and paused it for a while and then brought it back to the market to be used as a vaccination. And a lot of people are hesitant because it did cause problems with adults. They're hoping that it doesn't have the same effect with children. And, of course, that was the blood clotting issue that came up for the adults. So with children and vaccinations, there's many parents now that have in their mindsets that they don't even want their children vaccinated too much after they're newborn. So you have a newborn that used to get measles, mumps, rubella, chicken pox,
right?
The K, whatever that shot is, where they test the blood, and one more shot. So you might come out of the hospital with 5 shots as a newborn total maybe. And now parents are only wanting them to get the one shot, the K shot, and that's it. So you're leaving a big opening there for other infections to come in, and your child is not going to be covered with the vaccination and could possibly catch that disease. So there's so much controversy right now going on with that. And again, as I stated the last time, it's personal choices that people make, but you have to listen to, what's being said by your doctor, your personal pediatrician. In the news, there's so many controversies, and we're confused. There's a lot of confusion, but I guess at the end of the day, you have to look at your personal family and situations and how you want to look at this pandemic, and it is a deadly pandemic, and do you want your children to go to school and be safe and covered from this virus?
I would agree. And talking with Benita Presley of the Vancouver branch of the NAACP and Wellness and Recovery on the Go, I would ask this in regards to those being vaccinated in the process or have those questions. It's not a requirement now, but are we looking at sometime here in the near future where the governor may, in fact, or through the Washington State, the Secretary of Health, where they will institute, like you talk about all those vaccinations. For you to attend public school, you have to be fully vaccinated, or at least there's required vaccines that have to take place before you're allowed into school. Do we anticipate that that's going to happen here for the COVID-19 vaccine?
I would, and just me using my common sense and looking at how things work, I'm going to say that for people that don't want their kids vaccinated, they might be looking at their children being using the homeschooling or the
remote learning,
the remote learning model, and they'll have to be learning from home. And kids that are vaccinated will be welcomed into school. And I'm not saying that's absolutely what's going to happen, but again, just looking at how things have played out so far, right now they're offering the vaccines and seeing how many people are going to take them. But I know with just the chickenpox, measles, rubella, mumps, they were keeping kids out of school and saying, if you don't have your vaccination by this date, you're excluded from school. And parents had to make a decision very quickly, or they would have to find childcare for their kids. So it may come down to that. And today I do have stats to offer to back up some of the things that I'm saying, to give you an idea and maybe help you make your decisions about getting the vaccine.
Okay, well, I guess in addition to hearing that, as we're talking with Benita Presley, the Vancouver branch NAACP and Wellness and Recovery on the go, maybe update us on where we're at in the vaccination process. How much of the population has been vaccinated, at least with one dose? How many are fully inoculated? And what's the hesitancy going on, or should we say, is there still a big issue with hesitancy in either getting the second dose or even getting the first dose for this vaccination?
So one of the biggest problems that we're having right now are people are only getting one dose and they're not going back to get their second doses. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if a bigger problem is that when they call in and have their appointments set up, there's been some confusion about what day do I go back, or somebody will show up and they say, well, we don't have you down for that day. So I know I've heard that that's been an issue, but for the most part, I don't know if people had a problem with side effects from it, or they got the first vaccination and they were afraid to get it, and then they got it and then decided, I don't know if I want to get the other one now. So we have some hesitancy there, and we don't have enough people going in and getting their second vaccination really in a timely manner so that these stats can go up. So for the state of Washington, we have 424,250 cases for this week. We've had 5,635 total deaths to date. We've had 6,837,690 total people tested for COVID-19. Out of that 6 million, we have had 6.19% of positivity testing come back. We've had 2 million, I'm not used to dealing with these big numbers, 2,889,163 fully vaccinated. That leaves 39.02% of the population fully vaccinated. So the numbers are still low. We're not near 100%. And I'm going to give you a few more numbers. This is breakdown of Black and African American community.
Okay.
4% of the African American Black community we've had die of this of the population. We've had deaths. 4%. 4%.
Okay.
We have. Okay. Let me back up. I'm sorry. I'm going a little fast because this is new. I hadn't been doing this part.
It's all good.
We're going to say the statewide racial breakdown of the cases. 4% of the population have had COVID. 6% of these cases they've been diagnosed as positive, and 3% have been the deaths of Black and African Americans. Same thing for the Hispanic community. 13% of the population have tested for positive for it. 32% of the cases, 13% of it have tested for COVID-19. 32% of it have tested positive, and there's been 12% deaths in that population. And excuse me for getting those numbers jumbled and having some confusion with them, but I'll get better as time goes on.
No, that's fine. But I guess what really comes down to it, I just want the breakdown of those that have died. Are you basically saying that half of those who have passed on are African American?
The 4% of the confirmed cases that I said, the deaths of that 5,635, 4% of those were African American.
Okay. So some people would say, so if I'm hearing somebody hearing those numbers saying, well, the risk is 4% is 4% that I'll die from this disease versus getting the vaccine, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to think long and hard about their fears. And again, you have to look at the bigger picture of life and death. Do you want to have the worries of this vaccination? Do you want to have to wear this mask for the rest of your life? Do you want to interact with your family members, your children, your grandchildren, your elderly family members? You have to really take it all the way out there and take everything into consideration when you're making this decision. And I think I spoke last time that we talked about us in our community. We have hesitancy because we've been used as guinea pigs before around taking vaccinations for other things, and we have our fears, and they're valid. So there's shows that come on the TV. You can go on. Johns Hopkins University has a website for COVID-19. You can Google that, and you can find out so much information about COVID, about your fears. There's African American doctors that you can pull up and hear them speak about what their take is on it. And, we have the Moderna shot that the African American woman helped come up with that. So there's so many things that you can take into consideration to help you make your decision. I can't personally say go out and get it and wave a flag for it, but I'm saying that we have to do something in order for us to have our community safe and our children safe, and they have to go to school to be educated. So we have some decisions that we have to make.
As we're talking with Benita Presley of the Vancouver branch of the NAACP and Wellness and Recovery on the Go, joining us here on GameTime Sports Talk. That's interesting that you reiterated, or at least brought back to light, that it was an African American woman who did develop the Moderna vaccine. And there's another myth in the community is that there's women and African American women not wanting to take the vaccine, thinking it will affect future pregnancies. What do you say to that?
So there hasn't been enough, I will say, there hasn't been enough research put on the table yet about the effects that this shot has. I personally this week have had friends, one person that passed away this week or was buried this week that passed away of COVID and was in the hospital for several months. And there's people that have come down with it this week that I know that have been hospitalized. It comes in the form of if you get pneumonia, then your next step is COVID. So back to the pregnancy part of the question, there's so much we don't know. And
I'm sorry to interrupt. These that were infected that you're speaking of, were they vaccinated?
They were not vaccinated at the time, or weren't able to get it. It wasn't available for them initially. And the problem with that is you can walk around with symptoms and don't know you have it. So while you're in the part of being hesitant about getting the vaccination, you could be walking around with it and don't even know it.
Being asymptomatic, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, it's so many different variables about this this disease and pandemic, and we're just at a point now where we have to get off the fence and make a choice, because again, school is starting back up in September and the kids are going to be out this summer, and death is just an awful thing at any time. I had the bad experience of losing a grandson 4 years ago to dry drowning, and there's nothing worse than burying a child, is what I can say my experience was. So I'm saying all that to say that, if we don't look at the information as far as the vaccination for all these children, and if they're going back into the school setting, and we know ourselves that the hand washing and them being 3 feet apart is not going to be enough, if they don't wear their masks, if there's horseplay and they're playing and they're not doing what COVID says to stay safe, they're at risk. They're at high risk. So unless you're going to be training your children to wear masks and do sanitation and hand washing to the thousandth power, then you got a job on your hands as parents.
Absolutely, and we're sorry for your loss. Benita Presley joining us here on GameTime Sports Talk, courtesy of the Vancouver branch of the NAACP and Wellness and Recovery on the Go. Benita, I have to ask this question here before we end our conversation, because there seems to be a lot of confusion, and you don't really want the word confusion coming up when we're talking about the world of science, because when we talk about science, that they deal with facts. They deal with data, they deal with facts, hard facts, and that's why they come out with certain recommendations. But there has been some confusion from just the general population in regards to the CDC's latest ruling last week, saying in regards to a mask and for those who are fully vaccinated, and by that meaning being fully vaccinated after you've had your last shot, being either the second shot of the Pfizer or Moderna or the Johnson & Johnson shot, you are fully vaccinated or considered fully inoculated 14 days after that final shot, and not until then. And that's where the recommendations come from the CDC as far as indoor and outdoor gatherings, whether vaccinated people should be able to have masks. But right now we're on the honor system and looking at that. Can you address it and maybe talk a little bit about some of the concerns you've heard from those who read that information a little bit differently? And we talk about the honor system because those that aren't really hearing that information correctly aren't understanding that if you are not vaccinated, even though you're acting as if you are, you're putting yourself further at risk to contracting this disease than those who are vaccinated. That's number one. But I've noticed since, in these several days since this announcement was made by the CDC, some people are, they'll get edgy because there's still, different independent policies at stores. And we know that there's been some corporate mandates that have been lifted depending on the company and as far as where you can or if you're required to wear a mask or not. Some people are acting as if the pandemic is over, and that's my hesitancy on that is don't put your guard down as of yet. My question is, what would you tell those in regards to those who, if they're not vaxxed up, that want to not mask up? Do you say if you're not vaxxed up, still mask up, or even if you are vaxxed up, continue to mask up?
My thought is continue to mask up no matter what. My thing is trust none and watch all.
Amen.
I'm not going to take your word that you said you got vaccinated, because everywhere you go, if you go somewhere, some people are saying, pull your paperwork out and show me. And if you don't have that in your pocket, they're not going to believe you. So it's a matter of, because now they're saying keep wearing your mask. The only way you should really take your mask off and not wear it is if you're around your immediate family members and you know what goes on in your household. And people are following suit to what you require as somebody that's afraid of this pandemic and taking it seriously. Indoors, they're saying outdoors, you can take your mask off because you're outside, and that's what's going to help blow the pandemic away and keep the germs away. I don't even believe that's safe, because when people touch you or give you hugs, you don't know if they wash their hands or sanitize their hands. So it's more than one way to spread this. And the droplets are the number one way to do it. So if two people have their masks off, and even they went as far to say as even if you're vaccinated, you still might get it. So there's so many different things that keep coming up. One sentence says you got the vaccination and you're cool and you're safe. And then in another breath, some other sentence comes up that says, well, so, I say continue to wear your mask. One thing I need to really put out there, when you're going grocery shopping, please wear your mask in the grocery store. Don't think you're okay. When I went grocery shopping yesterday to do a repast and buy all this food, my hands were so dirty and black from picking up canned goods and putting them from the shelf to the basket. And fortunately, I have the handy wipes in my purse that have the 99.9% germ killer on them. So I'm okay with all that. But for somebody that just goes in the store and takes their groceries and puts them in the refrigerator and in their cabinets, so many people have touched the same items that you're touching. So you have to wipe those things down with a sanitizer wipe yourself, or spray them down and just wipe them off and put them away, so that you don't carry the pandemic or the germs home with you. So with that said, you got to wear your mask. You got to keep washing your hands. You've got to tell your children to do these things so that we're safe from whatever age you can start washing your hands to the oldest age you are. Everybody keep doing the same thing so that we can stay on the same page, so we can fight this pandemic the same way.
I would completely agree, and I'll also put out my word of advice there as well, as I'm looking at my producer. For those that you talked about, I know that we're going on the honor system right now, but that could quickly change if numbers go up, and you have to prove that you have been vaccinated. And that, of course, when you do get vaccinated, they do give you a card that of course, is stamped. You go look, and if you, like you said, some will maybe have forgotten it or left it at home or whatever the case is. Look, I double up. I not only carry my card, but if you're not able to carry your card, we are in the day and age of social media, and everybody has a phone, right? Take a picture of your card with your phone to prove. But the other thing is that it has to match up with your name. You could be taking a picture of somebody else's card, right? So right. There's going to be different ways that if they have to, if you're not respecting the honor code, where there are going to be some different requirements that do come about. So that would just be my piece of advice, and kind of looking and foreshadowing where this pandemic definitely does head next. Benita Presley, we appreciate your time, courtesy of the Vancouver branch of the NAACP and Wellness and Recovery on the Go. Can you give some information on how that maybe they could contact you, or any last news of note that you want to leave us with?
I will give you information. You can contact me at 503-933-5833. And I would say that cleanliness is next to godliness. So if you keep that in mind, you're going to be doing things the right way, washing your hands, wearing a clean mask. You are going to distance yourself so that you aren't too close to a person. If they may or may not have it, you're just keeping yourself and your family safe.
We appreciate you as always, Ms. Benita Presley, Wellness and Recovery on the Go, and representing the Vancouver branch of the NAACP. Appreciate your time as always. Stay safe and take care, and we'll definitely talk with you maybe next Wednesday, or of course sometime soon thereafter.
Yes, you will, and you guys have a great day.
Absolutely. Ms. Benita Presley joining us here on Game Time Sports Talk. We remind you that it's finally time. COVID-19 vaccines are now available to everyone 16 and older. To find and schedule an appointment, go to vaccinelocator.doh.wa.gov. A message from the Washington State Department of Health.